Hello everyone, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040 and welcome to another edition of the Flash Season 7 review series, and today I am going to be talking about Episode 7, Growing Pains, which I have just finished watching earlier today. And this episode wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. I would probably put this episode down as pretty average in my opinion. There wasn't really much going on here. This kind of felt like a filler sort of episode. It didn't really have a whole lot going on. Barry Allen was in this episode, but we didn't really see a lot of him. I would probably say the only highlight of this episode I would have to go with is probably Kristen Kramer hunting down Frost, and she had this confrontation with a new villain who burst onto the scene, a villain named Chilblain, who is kind of like Killer Frost but more of a bad guy, and he's got ice powers as well. That was probably the only good thing about this episode, but other than that, this episode didn't really have a whole lot going for it, and I'm not really entirely sure what's going on with Season 7 at the moment, because we started off very strong. We had two back-to-back fantastic episodes, but then after that it just kind of feels like the show's just coasting along, not a lot's really going on. And obviously, Tom Cavanagh is not been appearing in much episodes recently, so he's been sorely missed as well. But there's just not really much going on at the moment. I mean, we've got the whole situation where the Speed Force has taken on the face of Barry Allen's mother, Nora Allen, and she's staying with Iris and Barry. But other than that, there's not really a whole lot going on here. But like I said, this episode wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. I would probably just put it down as average. I wouldn't put this down as one of the best episodes of Season 7. And I'm hoping for the next episode things will start to pick up, but time will tell. So with that all said, let's get straight into it. Let's not waste any more time. Let's talk about Episode 7, Growing Pains. So we start off this episode where we see Barry comes home from an early morning heroic outing to find that the Speed Force Nora has made a massive and very impressive breakfast for him and Iris, and Barry goes to pick up a carafe of mimosas, though he unexpectedly vibrates so quickly that he shatters the glass. At breakfast they talk about the forces. Iris comments that it's like Speed Force Nora has always been a part of the family, which seems to rattle Barry. He notes that his powers are glitching, and Speed Force Nora says she's boosting his speed and he will just need to get used to it. She also eagerly volunteers to go with him to work, but she talks him out of it. When she shows up later, gives Barry a clue about why the ice is different, but his powers go haywire again. We also see at the crime lab Barry works on an analysis of the evidence, but the computers are slow. Speed Force Nora shows up once again, offering to help Barry, and Chester suggests they let her crunch the data, but Barry's powers glitch out and ends up destroying the evidence and the data, and Barry ends up snapping at the Speed Force Nora. I think what's probably the problem with Barry is he's very uncomfortable to be around Speed Force Nora because she's not really his mum. She's just taken on the face of his mum, who was murdered by Eobard Thawne. So I can imagine how that must feel, a living thing that's not really a real person taken on the face of someone you hold so dear to you. It would make you feel uncomfortable. I think it would make anyone feel uncomfortable. So Chester gets called to his first ever CCPD crime scene, and we see it's an ice attack, one that has killed the driver. Kramer arrives and automatically declares that Killer Frost did it. Now, Kramer is on a mission to capture Killer Frost by any means necessary, so she's obviously looking for any excuse to go after her, which we do see in this episode. Joe points out that Frost isn't the only criminal who uses ice to commit crimes, and despite some indications that Frost isn't behind this, Kramer refuses to listen and pulls rank, saying she's having the DA issue a warrant for her arrest. Having previously been apprised by Cecile of the charges the state is pursuing against her, Frost goes to her old bar to try and get info and meets the new bartender, Mark. While their news breaks of a hefty reward for information leading to her arrest, Frost hits up her old haunts and hits up the new bartender. While that's the bar, the news breaks up that there is a major reward for information leading to Killer Frost's arrest, and suddenly every person in the bar wants a crack at Killer Frost to get their hands on that award. She fights them off, save the one for the bartender, Mark, who stops him and then gives her information about where she might find this new ice metahuman. However, while Frost is chasing a lead, it's Caitlin that gets arrested by Kramer. Chester gets a lead on the ice metahuman and discovers they used artificial dark matter. The ice villain isn't a meta at all, and they know Caitlin and Frost used to be one person. Frost figures out Mark the bartender is the ice villain. He tipped off the cops about Caitlin, so she goes to confront him at the bar. He reveals his plan, that he was studying her so he could set her up for his crime, which was to steal back the tech he made after his disturbing experiments led him to being fired, and also charges to be brought against him. He's wanted her powers for years. He attacks her, calling himself Chillbane. Yeah, I don't like the name. And the two fight each other. And then at Star Labs, they figure out where Frost is, and the Flash heads off to try and help. Frost saves herself by stabbing him with an ice construct, and the Flash and Allegra show up in time to save his life, and Frost got a full confession of him on tape. Kramer shows up at the bar to arrest Frost, and after a moment of thinking it, Frost decides that while she knows she's changed, she really did do the crimes that she's accused of, and she has to own up to it. Frost surrenders and turns herself in. She ends up pleading guilty to her crimes, meaning her fate is up to the judge. But also Barry has to face up to things as well. He and Speed Force Nora talk things out and decide to forge a new relationship from there and agree to stop all of the other different Speed Forces that are out there. And that pretty much wraps up the end of this episode and my review. Overall, this episode, as I said, didn't really have a whole lot going for it. I would probably say that the Killer Frost little story arc that was going on in this episode was probably the only good thing about it. And I thought Killer Frost giving herself up and turning herself in was quite an interesting twist, because it really shows you how much she has actually changed. But we'll just have to see, really. But that's going to be it from me. I'm going to wrap this up now. What's your thoughts on Speed Force Nora and Barry Allen agreeing to work together? Do you think they could work? Do you think Barry could get past the anxiety that he's been experiencing around her? And also, what about Killer Frost? Do you think she could be found guilty, or do you think she might get a pass for the good deeds she's done in spite of her heinous crimes? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Flash Season 7 review series, where I'll be talking about Episode 8, and I'm really hoping that Episode 8 is actually going to be decent this time. So until next time, take care everybody, and stay safe, and once again, thanks for listening.